planet generates an incredible amount of extraordinary phenomenon. Some we take for granted, even if they are a little difficult to predict. Others occur to us as nothing short of miraculous. Often, these are events in places seldom seen by people. They are rare, mysterious, and many seem outright impossible. This series encapsulates the remarkable with the exceptional. Is seeing really believing? With the help of leading scientists, fact will be separated from fiction. Join us as we cross Russia's record-breaking, breathtaking Lake Baikal. Examine how Mother Nature creates her own cappuccino, Seafoam, and take a journey into the extraordinary, age-old Sudwala Caves in South Africa. It is a journey taken with eyes wide open. Welcome to Impossible Planet. It's a hub of scientific research that really shouldn't be there. It's a frozen mirror and a liquid roadway. It's a marvel to wonder at and a deeply precious, finite resource to protect.
It is a World Heritage System, and it is of great interest to all scientists. It is considered to be the oldest freshwater lake in the world. It carries about 23,000 cubic kilometers of water, which is supposed to be 1/5 of the total freshwater in this globe. Can you imagine that 20% of the total freshwater source is locked up in one lake?
Lake Baikal, sometimes referred to as the Blue Eye of Siberia, is located in the southeast of the sprawling Russian province. The entire lake is frozen over for around 5 to 6 months of the year, when some of its most astonishing creations are on display. Known for its stunning crystal-clear waters, not only is it the oldest freshwater lake in the world, at 25 million years old, it is also the deepest, running to 5,315 feet. The sheer size of the surface area is enormous, at around 31,500 square kilometers, which is comparable to approximately the area of Belgium. While it might be a world record holder for Mother Nature, Lake Baikal's rich and imposing form is shrouded in mystery. How it exists in the first place is a topic up for debate.
Baikal is a bit of a tectonic mystery. Exactly why it's sitting where it is is not entirely agreed upon. So geologists are very good at having lots of different opinions about a single thing like Lake Baikal. We do know that it is a rift valley, which means it's a place where the crust is under tension and is pulling apart. That usually happens because of plate tectonics, but sitting in the middle of Mongolia, the Russian plate as it is, we don't exactly know why it's pulling apart. There aren't any obvious tectonic plate boundaries near it that would be causing that. We do know from dating of the sediments that it initially started to rift 25 to 30 million years ago.
What is well known, however, is the quality of the water it holds.
The water is entirely fresh. The volume of Lake Baikal itself is greater than all of the Great Lakes, on the US-Canada boundary put together. So it's about 1.6 kilometers deep, and it's about 32,000 square kilometers, and a very long, thin-looking lake. It's particularly big, and the water's very, very clear because it's very oxygenated.
The lake's crystal color has to do with the plant life that surrounds the lake and the aquatic life it fosters.
The clarity is attributed to the 330 streams and rivers flowing into the system. And all these rivers come through big mountains full of plants. So there are a lot of water plants living in these rivers. So these water plants will filter all the pollutants, particles. Then there are a lot of organisms within the lake that seem to feed on small, tiny particles. So in other words, it's a thoroughly filtered system. So the water becomes very clear.
Come winter, when the Siberian winds whip up and this expansive lake begins to freeze, this natural filtration system allows some of the most beautiful and curious phenomena to become highly visible.
It's amazing. It looks like thick glass sheets covering the entire lake. But glass sheets with crackings extending to several meters. And through that, you can see details of the bottom of the lake. This is a very interesting phenomenon. And also you may be able to see a lot of bubbles in certain areas locked up. And in certain parts, the ice looks black.
It is perhaps unsurprising that a lake so large could play host to such a range of phenomena, including the deceptively clear ice, a true testament to the water's purity.
Normally, ice is white. Ice has no color, but ice is white because it locks up bubbles of air. When you haven't got any air, definitely the ice should look like glass, thin sheets of glass. And that's what you see here. And through that, you can see the deep blue water, and it appears to be black then. That is called black ice.
Its huge expanse and the enormous amount of time it spends frozen allows the ice to take on a series of different hues.
Of course, we're talking about Siberia here, and it gets very cold. And even though Lake Baikal is deep, that ice layer on top can be thick enough to easily walk on 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 feet thick. One of the most beautiful things about this phenomena is the blue hue that this ice can sometimes take on. And that's because the air bubbles have been squeezed out of the ice, making it very, very pure. And that ice absorbs most of the red and yellow and orange light and reflects back the blue.
The wider climate of the area, particularly the strong winds and shifts in temperature, also contribute to the many varying shapes and forms the surface ice takes on.
These giant snow monsters are nothing but the result of wave action that happen to accumulate ice in certain form, certain morphic form. So you can use your imagination and attribute all sort of sizes and shapes to it. But it is giant, it is big, and it keeps on changing, yes, according to the wind direction.
Monsters, otherwise known as hummocks, which have been reported to reach heights of 50 feet. Sculpted by the hand of nature, these stunning ice blocks are famous for their turquoise coloring, glowing bright as they catch the sun.
So some of them could be really quite big. There's caves in some of those hummocks. So they can be quite substantial, especially for something that's been frozen for 6 months of the year. And, you know, with a bit of freezing, thawing, the structure can grow, can be meters high. If you were walking along a flat ice surface, you might see something that looks like a small hill.
Between the freezing temperatures and fierce winds, the entire landscape is adorned with sculptures and picturesque blocks. Sometimes it's even possible to catch ice floes in action. Splintered ice can form in what appears to be ice waves, pushed onto the shoreline or cracks in the lake. Underneath these spectacular ice forms remains meters of unfrozen water, which is fortunate for the 15 to 1,800 different species who call this lake their home. Ranging from the large fish to the tiniest bacteria, it is actually these aquatic life forms that help contribute to one of the phenomena the lake is best known for: its seemingly impossible frozen bubbles of gas.
How is it possible that these gas bubbles become trapped in this beautiful turquoise blue ice? It almost seems beyond belief, but there it is. So what is this gas? Well, it's mainly methane, and methane is a byproduct of decomposing organic material. If you have plants, leaves, dead animals sinking to the bottom of the lake, they will start to decompose, and the bacteria that's involved in that process will excrete methane gas as part of their metabolic process.
Methane is regularly emitted by various other life forms into the atmosphere and is usually invisible to the human eye. Its density is much lower than that of water or ice. When it seeps out of the lake's base sediment layer, it keeps its identity in what appears to be a bubble.
When these bubbles of gas percolate up from the bottom of the lake, they'll frequently get trapped in that layer of ice that's at the surface at the beginning of the winter. And they'll just sit there, frozen, sometimes as far as the eye can see. It's a beautiful thing to behold.
The various concentrations and ranging depths of bubbles can seem more like an illusion than a tangible reality. It's a sight in and of itself, but also allows for some fun to be had.
This is really cool, actually. Because methane is a flammable gas, you can go to some of these lakes and stab into these bubbles and light them on fire. You can have a jet of flame shooting 8 to 10 feet up in the air, coming out of the ice. It seems impossible. It's this uncanny mixture of fire and ice.
It may be easy to be distracted by the expansive, enthralling beauty of Lake Baikal. But we should not lose sight of the important role it plays as a life source, not only for the many creatures it houses, but potentially for humankind.
The freshwater resources is very limited on this planet. Major part of our water is seawater. Actual fresh water is very small. It's a world heritage. This fresh water is precious, and this is for the world.
Imagine enjoying a swim in the ocean one moment, only to be swallowed up by a giant bubble bath the next. In 2007, a freak display of nature took over an entire beach north of Sydney in Australia. In 2017, the same phenomena whipped up a chaotic scene on a shoreline in England. Over the years, this curious substance has popped up in rare and often surprising mass events, each instance sparking headlines around the world, dubbing the phenomena a cappuccino coast. Its real name is Seafoam.
So if you've never seen seafoam, it would look a little bit like your froth on top of your cappuccino in the morning.
In peculiar cases, huge marine disturbances blend the ocean into a froth, resembling more of a spilled latte than idyllic beachfront, and inspiring locals to take to social media to share their delight. But this isn't the result of an accident at the local coffee shop. It's a natural result of rough weather, most commonly after a storm, one that the Pacific Ocean has been known to brew upon occasion. On the west coast of New Zealand, if conditions are right, you might just happen across an event where the foam can be thick enough to blur the line between land and sea. Just like your morning brew, seafoam requires only a few simple ingredients. So what factors could possibly stir the shallows into such a frenzy?
We need three things to get seafoam forming. We need water with something in it, so carbohydrates, lipids, fats, small particles, and we need air. So when air from the atmosphere and the water have some kind of mechanical action, they combine and we end up with seafoam.
Dr. Catherine Boisvert is an evolutionary development biologist and senior research scientist at Curtin University. With a little more than an aquarium tank and a protein skimmer, Dr. Boisvert is able to demonstrate in miniature how the ocean makes its foam.
Pretend that this column of water is the ocean. So we have our ocean, and we have a pump here, which is our wave-making machine. So the wave and the ocean together They're making a nice little swirl, but they don't make any air bubble. We need to add the atmosphere for that.
Dr. Boisvert introduces air to the mix, creating a rush of bubbles. But they dissipate almost instantly. To give them stability, a final ingredient is needed: a cocktail of nutrients.
In here, we have proteins and soaps, which would represent what algae and plants in the nature would be doing, so that from the decomposition. So I put it into my tank. You can see that it doesn't really create any foam. We're going to give it a little stir. Here you can see that we're starting to have a little bit of foam, and it will rise at the top. There we go. So here's your sea foam recreated in the lab.
This process occurs only in the ocean's topmost region, known as the surface microlayer. Here, Mother Nature finds the key ingredients to turn barista and whip up a milky-looking foam. Coastlines are notorious for this, where crashing waves and high winds provide the mechanical energy to whip up this bubbly brew. But where are all the proteins and soaps coming from?
If they come from natural sources, they would come from the decomposition of marine plants and animals, and they might also come from small animals breaking down. Diatoms, for example, are really rich in silica, so some sea foams will be really rich in silica.
Diatoms are a type of phytoplankton, which can grow rapidly and numerously in an event called a bloom. They release key nutrients that can help build sea foam.
What happens is that they produce a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of proteins, some lipids, and those contribute to the sea foam forming. They also make some mucilage, which is plant slime, which also goes into the formation of sea foam.
These nutrients and particulates really are the secret to the soufflé. Depending on their concentration in seawater, the resulting foam could disappear as quick as a few milliseconds, or endure for several days.
If you have lipids or fats, it tends to make the sea foam less permanent, but if you have some small particles, it tends to stabilize the foam. So it really depends what you have inside your sea foam, and some of it can last for days and days.
As it did in Australia in 2007, swamping the beaches with a blanket of foam that stretched out as far as 30 miles into the Pacific Ocean. This extraordinary display came in the wake of storms that churned up waters rich in nutrients from runoff. But that doesn't make it an entirely natural phenomenon.
We often find that sea foam forms when there are heavy rains, when there are massive storms, or there's some events like algal bloom, or some accumulation of waste from homes, from tanneries, from industry, etc.
The mix of nutrients may vary significantly between locations and can be harmful or benign, depending on these environmental factors.
It does tend to accumulate things that are not great in great concentrations. Those that can be metals, pesticides, oils, etc. And what happens when the bubbles pop is that those things can become aerosols. So if you were to swim inside the sea foam, even if you don't drink it, you can end up breathing it in.
You don't need to have contact with seafoam to breathe in the gases released by the bubbles. It doesn't take much wind to lift foam into the air.
So if you blow on your cup of coffee in the morning and you've got some milk froth everywhere, it's the same with the ocean. So if the wind can blow that sea foam and it can be transported elsewhere, it can become aerosols if there's something toxic inside the sea foam.
Thankfully, harmful aerosols are the exception rather than the rule. Most of the time, seafoam is non-toxic.
It might not be great if you're living around a tannery or an oil spill or something like that, but generally normal sea foam would not be harmful for humans.
There are no universal standards for measuring and testing seafoam. One thing we can be sure of is that pollution from human activity is having a drastic negative impact on our oceans, which may manifest in the quality of the seafoam that washes up on our beaches in the future.
What is important to know is that we are certainly contributing to pollution and to sea foam with our waste. And it's really important to have policies in place that actually cleans our water before it gets released into the environment.
Each of us has power on an individual level to clean up our oceans. By taking pollutants out of the equation, we can enjoy the spectacle of seafoam with clear consciences. Secure in the knowledge that if this strange phenomenon rolls onto our beaches, it will be as nature intended it. It's a treasure trove and a gateway to the past. A system so complex and mysterious that despite its incredible age and long history of human habitation, it still poses questions that cannot be answered. Welcome to some of the oldest known caves on Earth.
Sudwala Caves is located in Mpumalanga province in South Africa. Mpumalanga province is proudly known as the place of the rising sun because it's the easternmost part of the country.
Located a 30 minutes drive from the city of Nelspruit, the Sudwala Caves are nestled within the Drakensberg escarpment. The striking landscape is one thing, but the age of this area is what really makes this location stand out. While Sudwala Cave is thought to have formed 240 million years ago, the rock it is formed within is estimated to be more than 2 billion years old. As the owner of Sudwala Caves, Philip Owen explains, back then, things around here looked slightly different.
This whole area was a shallow sea, and the rock formation that we're standing around us inside the cave, the dolomite, is a sedimentary rock. So this was all deposits from this ancient sea.
Sudwala Cave system is basically cavities that are interconnected that have developed in dolomite rock, which is a very soluble rock type It's actually quite soft to the touch, and so it easily gets dissolved by slightly acidic water.
Like scars gained from a battle fought long ago, the effects of this water are easy to see. Its channels carving the cave walls.
You'll notice that it's got so many linear features that are going across. These are just fractures, and they have been very significant in the story of how this cave formed, because they provide weak points where something as corrosive as acidic water would flow, causing more effective dissolution, and eventually blocks of this rock would break down and get further dissolved to the point that you would end up with a cavity. Even on the ceiling of the cave, there's little hollow areas down towards the side of the chamber here. You have all these potholes showing you the power of water in landscaping.
The erosive features of the dolomite lend themselves to the imagination, conjuring up vivid images. Some of the more dramatic speleothem features within are particularly well known.
If you take a closer look at this wonderful rock formation, you'll notice that it bears resemblance to elephant skin. That because of the wrinkly texture and also the dull gray color that it has.
Findings within the cave may provide some insight into the age of the formation, such as the discovery of the fossilized remains of one of the earliest forms of oxygen-producing plants on Earth, Collenia.
The algae goes back about 3.5 billion years as the first cyanobacteria that we know of on the planet. And there's deposits inside the dolomite, which tells us that 2.5 billion years ago, when the dolomite was formed, they were prolific in these seas.
So over here, we have a good example of cyanobacteria fossilized, well preserved because of the silica-rich chert layers. This area was the site of an oxygen factory. Basically, they took carbon dioxide from the system, used some light to generate oxygen that was then flooded into the Earth's atmosphere, making our planet more habitable.
The rock itself also tells a story.
Dolomite is a sedimentary rock, so especially where the cave collapses, you can see the different layers of chert, then the layers of dolomite. Also the pH in the water. If the water is slightly acidic, there's a chemical reaction between the dolomite and the water. It makes it soft.
Classified as a karst system, the softness of this rock ensures that this cave, given the presence of water, is constantly growing and changing.
This is what you would call the flowstone formation, and also if you put your light against it, it becomes translucent. So the caves are still growing with more water, slowly but surely.
Sudwala's interconnected chambers are thought to vary from areas with cathedral-esque vaulted ceilings to tiny crawl spaces fit only for one person. Yet, so much of it is still to be uncovered.
We are sitting in the crystal chamber. We worked hard to get here. It takes 2 hours to get here, 2 kilometers in, 2 kilometers out. And this is the highlight of the tour. If you look at it, these are all crystals and calcite formations that you won't normally find in a dolomite cave. Like the dolomite caves surrounding Sabi doesn't have any crystals, so that's unique.
It's also the only chamber that has been discovered so far within the Sudwala Cave system that plays host to so many of these shiny adornments. Their quiet, intricate beauty, a sight to behold.
Well, the cave system, as we know it today, is 6 kilometers long, but they have had challenges getting to the furthest extent of this cave because of obstacles that you start encountering beyond the famous crystal chamber.
Reaching the site is no mean feat. It's a journey few will ever have access to or the ability to take. The crystal chamber is deep within this cave system, requiring the navigation of tiny crawl spaces and the scaling of internal ravines.
What's impossible is that some of my friends has been exploring this cave for 3 weeks non-end, and they haven't found the end of this cave. So that's fascinating.
For the intrepid explorers who make their way deep within the cave system, astounding and unique surprises await them.
So in the crystal chamber, the main crystals that are found there are aragonite. We don't find big crystals anywhere else except in such confined spaces like the crystal chamber, where temperature, pressure, and other environmental conditions are more constant. Our body temperatures and the ground movements disturb any significant amount of crystal development in the rest of the caves.
Crystals are not the only epic formations that have developed over millions of years.
There's these gigantic cave formations like the Screaming Monster. One thing that I find fascinating about this formation is the sheer size of it. If you take a moment to consider the fact that you deposit such features either drop by drop or layer by layer, can you just imagine the amount of time that it took for this feature to grow to this extent?
It's the oldest formation in the caves, about 180 million years old. In human terms, we cannot comprehend these impossible lengths of time.
Sudwala Caves also has a long and varied history of human habitation.
There's evidence of tools that they found from the Stone Age. And then a couple of years back, 1800s and before, the Swazis also used it as refuge.
The caves are renowned for remaining at a constant 17 degrees Celsius, thought mostly to be the thanks to the constant breeze that flows through the cave, the source of which, remarkably, is still yet to be discovered. It was this mysterious breeze that famously came to the aid of one of the first inhabitants of the cave, Somkuba, the son of Swazi King Sobhuza. In the 19th century, Somkuba's right to the Swazi throne was being challenged by his younger brother, Mswati, and his life and the lives of his followers were at risk.
Knowing that Mswati will come to attack him, Somkuba saw the potential of using the cave as a hideout.
Once Mswati and his soldiers arrived, they found the cave too dark to enter. Instead, they started a fire at the entrance in the hope of smoking Somkuba and his 3,000 followers out.
The plan did not succeed, as the cave has a strong flow of fresh air coming through, which blew out the smoke. Then Somkuba and his people were safe.
The rock formations within the cave also served an important purpose in times of conflict.
This flowstone formation was used as an alarm system by the Swazi people who used the cave as a refuge during the times of war. It is named Somkuba's Gong after their leader. When there was an attack, they would hit it. It travels 1,500 meters per second. You can hear it from the back and even when you're outside.
While the caves themselves are a sight to behold, remnants left behind by the cave's past inhabitants paint a picture of the lives they led. And their ingenious use of their natural surroundings are equally as impressive.
We have a babuntel bush tree, which was used as a torch. They will dip it inside melted animal fat, and it could burn for about an hour. And they left a large grinding stone, which was used by women to grind their maize.
While early human inhabitants are long gone, the Sudwala Caves are still a place of shelter for age-old formations to grow and flourish within its walls, all of which must be preserved and respected for generations to come.
It's just unbelievable to think that there was already life on the planet 2.5 billion years ago and holds still so many mysteries for scientists even today.
While taking a journey deep within the Sudwala Caves is a privilege still reserved for those brave enough to navigate its dolomite paths, an appreciation for its epic age and exceptional contents must be had by all. It's a journey back in time, one that is well worth taking.